Topic 2: Compliance Law and Ethics. Laws and Regulations. As a future information security professional, you will be required to understand the scope of an organization's legal and ethical responsibilities. To minimize the organization's liabilities, the information security practitioner must understand the current legal environment and keep appraised of new laws, regulations, and ethical issues as they emerge. By educating employees and management about their legal and ethical obligations and the proper use of information technology and information security, security professionals can keep an organization focused on its primary objectives. Information security professionals and managers involved in information security must possess a rudimentary grasp of the legal framework within which their organizations operate. The legal environment influences the behavior of every organization depending on the nature of the organization and the scale on which it operates. All management, specifically information security professionals, are expected to act in compliance with legal regulations and requirements when collecting, storing, and using information. There are various types of law. Constitutional law originates with the United States Constitution, a state constitution, or local constitution, bylaws, or charter. Statutory law originates from a legislative branch specifically tasked with the creation and publication of laws and statutes. Regulatory or administrative law originates from an executive branch or authorized regulatory agency and includes executive orders and regulations. Common law, case law, and precedent originate from a judicial branch or oversight board and involves the interpretation of law based on the actions of a previous and/or higher court or board. Within statutory law, one can further divide laws into their association with individuals, groups, and the state. Civil law embodies a wide variety of laws pertaining to relationships between and among individuals and organizations. Civil law includes contract law, employment law, family law, and tort law. Tort law is the subset of all civil law that allows individuals to seek redress in the event of personal, physical, or financial injury. Criminal law addresses violations harmful to society and is actively enforced and prosecuted by the state. Criminal law addresses statutes associated with traffic law, public order, property damage, and personal damage. Private law is considered a subset of civil law and regulates the relationships among individuals as well as relationships between individuals and organizations. Private law encompasses family law, commercial law, and labor law. Public law regulates the structure and administration of government agencies and their relationships with citizens, employees, and other governments. Public law includes criminal law, administrative law, and constitutional law. The Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986 is the cornerstone of many computer-related federal laws and enforcement efforts. It was amended in October of 1996 by the National Information Infrastructure Protection Act of 1996, which modified several sections of the previous act and increased the penalties for select crimes. The CFA was further modified by the USA Patriot Act of 2001, Uniting and Strengthening America Act by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism, providing law enforcement agencies with broader latitude to combat terrorism-related activities, after the September 11 attacks on the New York World Trade Center. The USA Patriot Act of 2001 was updated and extended in many cases permanently through the USA Patriot Improvement and Reauthorization Act of 2005. In May of 2015, the U.S. Senate failed to extend the Patriot Act, resulting in the expiration of many of its components on June 1, 2015. The controversy over Section 215, which allowed the National Security Agency to collect metadata, resulted in a transfer of the responsibility for collecting and reporting this information to the telecommunications companies as part of the USA Freedom Act, uniting and strengthening America by fulfilling rights and ending eavesdropping, dragnet collection, and online monitoring act. The USA Freedom Act was signed into law by President Obama in June of 2015. The Computer Security Act of 1987 was one of the first attempts to protect federal computer systems by establishing minimum acceptable security practices. The Computer Security Act established a Computer System Security and Privacy Advisory Board within the Department of Commerce. Another provision requires mandatory periodic training in computer security awareness and accepted computer security practice for all users of federal computer systems. The CSA charged the National Bureau of Standards, now NIST, and the National Security Agency with the development of standards, guidelines, and associated methods and techniques for computer systems, uniform standards and guidelines for most federal computer systems, technical management, physical, and administrative standards and guidelines for the cost-effective security and privacy of sensitive information in federal computer systems, guidelines for use by operators of federal computer systems that contain sensitive information in training their employees in security awareness and accepted security practice, and validation procedures for an evaluation of the effectiveness of standards and guidelines through research and liaison with other government and private agencies. Many organizations collect, trade, and sell personal information as a commodity, and many individuals are becoming aware of these practices and looking to the governments to protect their privacy. Today, information aggregation from multiple sources permits unethical organizations to build databases with alarming quantities of personal information. Privacy in this context is not absolute freedom from observation, rather it is defined as the state of being free from unsanctioned intrusion. The Federal Privacy Act of 1974 regulates the government's use of private information and was created to ensure that government agencies protect the privacy of individuals' and businesses' information and makes them responsible if any portion of this information is released without permission. The Electronic Communications Privacy Act of 1986 is a collection of statutes that regulate the interception of wire, electronic, and oral communications. These statutes work in cooperation with the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which prohibits search and seizure without a warrant. The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996, HIPAA, also known as the Kennedy-Kassebaum Act, attempts to protect the confidentiality and security of healthcare data by establishing and enforcing standards and by standardizing electronic data interchange. HIPAA requires organizations that retain healthcare information to use information security mechanisms to protect this information, as well as policies and procedures to maintain them. It also requires a comprehensive assessment of the organization's information security systems, policies, and procedures. HIPAA provides guidelines for the use of electronic signatures based on security standards ensuring message integrity, user authentication, and non-repudiation. HIPAA has 5 fundamental privacy principles: consumer control of medical information, boundaries on the use of medical information, accountability for the privacy of private information, balance of public responsibility for the use of medical information for the greater good measured against impact to the individual, and the security of health information. Enacted in 2009, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act was designed to provide a response to the economic crisis in the United States. The act was specifically focused on providing tax cuts and funding for programs, federal contracts, grants, and loans. The Health Information Technology for Economic and Clinical Health Act, enacted as part of ARRA and in cooperation with HIPAA, also requires that covered entities notify information owners of breaches. The Financial Services Modernization Act, or Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act of 1999, contains a number of provisions that affect banks, security firms, and insurance companies. The Act requires all financial institutions to disclose their privacy policies, describing how they share non-public personal information and describing how customers can request that their information not be shared with third parties. The Act also ensures that the privacy policies in effect in an organization are fully disclosed when a customer initiates a business relationship and distributed at least annually for the duration of the professional association. In an attempt to protect intellectual property and competitive advantage, Congress passed the Economic Espionage Act in 1996. This law attempts to protect trade secrets from the foreign government that uses its classic espionage apparatus to spy on a company to the 2 American companies that are attempting to uncover each other's bids proposals, or to the disgruntled former employee who walks out of his former company with a computer diskette full of engineering schematics. The Security and Freedom Through Encryption Act of 1997 provides guidance on the use of encryption and institutes measures of public protection from government intervention. Specifically, the Act reinforces an individual's right to use or sell encryption algorithms without concern for the impact of other regulations requiring some form of key registration. The Act prohibits the federal government from requiring the use of encryption for contracts, grants, and other official documents and correspondence. United States copyright law extends protection to intellectual property, which includes works published in electronic formats. The doctrine of fair use allows material to be quoted for the purpose of news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and a number of other related activities, so long as the purpose is educational and not for profit and the usage is not excessive. Proper acknowledgement must be provided to the author and/or copyright holder of such works, including a description of the location of source materials by using a recognized form of citation. All federal agencies are required under the Freedom of Information Act of 1966 to disclose records requested in writing by any person. The Freedom of Information Act applies only to federal agencies and does not create a right of access to records held by Congress, the courts, or by state and local government agencies. Each state has its own public access laws that should be consulted for access to state and local records. The Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002 enforces accountability for the financial record-keeping and reporting at publicly traded corporations. The law requires that the CEO and Chief Financial Officer assume direct and personal accountability for the completeness and accuracy of a publicly traded organization's financial reporting and record-keeping systems, as these executives attempt to ensure that the systems used to record and report are sound, often relying upon the expertise of CIOs and CISOs to do so. The related areas of availability and confidentiality are also emphasized. A breach law specifies a requirement for organizations to notify affected parties when they have experienced a specified type of loss of information. Most of these laws also require some form of after-breach support from the organization, such as free or discounted credit monitoring, progress reports, and a description of actions taken to rectify the incident and prevent reoccurrence. Although the United States currently does not have a national breach law, several bills and proposals are being reviewed by Congress. The Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, PCI DSS, is a set of industry standards that are mandated for any organization that handles credit, debit, and specialty payment cards in an effort to reduce credit card fraud. The current standard, 3.1, is presented by the PCI Security Standards Council as focusing on 12 requirements in 6 areas. These areas are secure network and systems development and maintenance, which includes firewall installation and operation and modification of the vault system passwords and configurations. Cardholder data protection, which is general protection of cardholder data storage and the use of encryption when transmitting cardholder data across open public networks. Vulnerability management, program maintenance, the use of maintained and updated malware and antivirus protection, secure systems and application development and maintenance. PCI DSS also focuses on strong access control measure implementation, such as the use of need-to-know access controls for cardholder data, formal access controls for system components, emphasizing effective identification and authentication procedures, and management of physical security for cardholder data access. Network monitoring and testing includes network resources and cardholder data being monitored, tracked, and audited, and security systems and processes periodically tested. Finally, information security policy maintenance, the effective and comprehensive information security policy development and implementation for all personnel. The benefits of PCI DSS compliance, as promoted by the PCI Security Standards Council, include an assertion that systems processing payment cards are secure, promoting trust in customers, improve reputation with payment card issue and payment processing organization, prevention of security breaches, assistance in complying with other security standards such as HIPAA, SOX, and GLB, support for organizational security strategies, and increased efficiency of the information infrastructure. Many domestic laws and customs do not apply to international trade, which is governed by international treaties and trade agreements. Because of the political complexities of the relationships among nations and cultural differences, There are currently few international laws relating to privacy and information security. The European Council Cybercrime Convention empowers an international task force to oversee a range of Internet security functions and to standardize technology laws internationally. It also attempts to improve the effectiveness of international investigations into breaches of technology law. The overall goal of the convention is to simplify the acquisition of information for law enforcement agents in certain types of international crimes, as well as the extradition process. The Digital Millennium Copyright Act is a U.S.-based international effort to reduce the impact of copyright, trademark, and privacy infringement, especially via the removal of technological copyright protection measures. The European Union created Directive 95/46/EC that increases individual rights to process and freely move personal data. The United Kingdom has already implemented a version of this directive called the database right. High-tech crimes are defined and prosecuted in Australia under its Commonwealth legislation Part 10.7, Computer Offences of the Criminal Code Act of 1995. That law specifically includes data system intrusion, such as hacking, unauthorized destruction or modification of data, actions intended to deny service of computer systems to intended users, such as denial of service and distributed denial of service attacks, the creation and distribution of malicious software. It is the responsibility of information security professionals to understand state laws and regulations and ensure that their organization's security policies and procedures comply with the laws and regulations. For example, the Georgia Computer Systems Protection Act has various computer security provisions and establishes specific penalties for use of information technology to attack or exploit information systems and organizations. Another example, the Georgia Identity Theft Law, requires that a business may not discard a record containing personal information unless it shreds, erases, modifies, or otherwise makes the information irretrievable.